The Eiffel Tower Sale, 1925. In the spring of 1925, Paris was buzzing with energy. The Eiffel Tower, built for the 1889 World's Fair, stood tall over the city, but to many Parisians at the time, it was still considered an eyesore. Maintenance was expensive, and rumors occasionally circulated that the French government might one day dismantle it. For a master con man like Victor Lustig, this was the perfect opportunity. Lustig, a smooth-talking Austrian swindler, posed as a government official. He sent invitations to a group of scrap metal dealers, summoning them to a secret meeting at a luxurious Paris hotel. There, he claimed the French government had decided to quietly sell the Eiffel Tower for demolition, to avoid public outrage. With forged documents in hand, he convinced the businessmen that the deal was real, and that only one of them would get the privilege of dismantling the most famous landmark in France. One eager buyer, André Poisson, took the bait. Hoping the deal would secure him prestige and profits, he handed Lustig a hefty bribe along with payment for the supposed contract. With the money in his pocket, Lustig vanished from Paris before Poisson realized he'd been duped. Out of embarrassment, Poisson never reported the con, giving Lustig a clean escape. The Eiffel Tower scam was so successful that Lustig nearly pulled it off a second time before fleeing Europe for good. His boldness and attention to detail cemented him as one of the most legendary conmen in history. Unlike modern scams, which often rely on technology, Lustig's trick worked because of human psychology, greed, secrecy, and the desire for prestige. The sale of the Eiffel Tower remains one of history's greatest confidence tricks. It proved that even the most iconic landmark in the world could become the centerpiece of a scam, if spun with enough charm and daring. The Spanish prisoner scam, 19th century. Long before email inboxes filled with messages from Nigerian princes, there was the Spanish prisoner scam, one of the oldest and most enduring cons in history. It emerged in the 19th century and became the blueprint for countless frauds that followed. The scam worked on a simple but powerful hook: the promise of secret riches. Victims would receive a letter claiming that a wealthy but politically important man was being held prisoner in Spain under a false name. The letter writer, posing as a trusted confidant, insisted that the prisoner had immense wealth hidden abroad. If the recipient could provide funds for bribes, legal fees, or travel expenses, they would be handsomely rewarded once the prisoner was freed and reunited with his fortune. The genius of the scam was how it appealed to greed and compassion at the same time. Victims felt they were helping an innocent man while also securing a share of a hidden treasure. To make the story more convincing, fraudsters added layers of detail: noble titles, forged documents, or claims of royal connections. Each reply from the victim was met with new requests for money, always small enough to seem plausible, but frequent enough to drain fortunes over time. Unlike smash-and-grab cons, the Spanish prisoner required patience. Some conmen nurtured their victims for months or even years, building trust through correspondence before asking for larger sums. Most victims never realized they had been duped until it was too late, and because of the shame of being fooled, many never reported the crime. The scam's influence is still alive today. Modern email frauds, promising inheritances, gold, or lost millions if you just cover fees first, follow the exact same script. The Spanish prisoner reminds us that while technology has changed, human vulnerability to greed, hope, and trust has not. The Ponzi scheme, 1920s. Few scams have become so infamous that the scammer's name itself is now used to describe the crime. That is the legacy of Charles Ponzi, an Italian immigrant whose fraud in the early 1920s not only swindled thousands but also gave birth to the term Ponzi scheme. Ponzi's plan was deceptively simple. He promised investors massive returns, 50% in just 45 days, or 100% in 90 days. His pitch was that he could profit from the difference in international postal reply coupons, which were used to prepay postage between countries. In theory, Ponzi would buy the coupons cheaply overseas and redeem them in the United States for a higher value, pocketing the profit. On paper, it seemed like a clever arbitrage opportunity. The reality, however, was that Ponzi never made his fortune from coupons. Instead, he paid early investors with the money from later investors, creating the illusion of success. As word spread of people doubling their money, the scheme ballooned. At its peak, Ponzi was taking in millions of dollars, and his name was splashed across newspapers. People mortgaged homes, sold family heirlooms, and poured life savings into what they believed was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. But the numbers didn't add up. The scale of coupons needed to support the scheme was absurd, far more than actually existed worldwide. Investigators and journalists soon uncovered the fraud. By the summer of 1920, Ponzi's empire collapsed, leaving investors ruined. Losses were estimated at $20 million, an astronomical figure at the time. Ponzi was arrested, jailed, and eventually deported, but the damage was done. His scam lives on as a textbook example of financial fraud. Modern con men, from small-time swindlers to billion-dollar fraudsters like Bernard Madoff, have repeated the same formula. The Ponzi scheme remains a chilling reminder that if returns sound too good to be true, they almost always are. The fake Tsar of Russia, 1600s. In the early 17th century, Russia was a land in turmoil. The death of Tsar Ivan the Terrible had left a shaky dynasty, and when his weak son Fyodor died without an heir, the nation plunged into a period known as the Time of Troubles. Famine, foreign invasions, and civil strife left the throne vulnerable. And into this chaos stepped one of history's boldest impostors, false Dmitry I. The real Dmitry, Ivan the Terrible's youngest son, had died under mysterious circumstances as a child. Years later, a clever pretender appeared, claiming to be the miraculously surviving boy. With charm, charisma, and the backing of powerful Polish nobles, he convinced many that he was the rightful Tsar. The promise of stability and legitimacy was tempting, and supporters flocked to his cause. In 1605, Dmitry marched into Moscow with an army, was crowned Tsar of Russia, and even married a Polish noblewoman. For nearly a year, he ruled as if he truly belonged on the throne. To many commoners weary of chaos, he seemed like a savior, bringing new hope to the country. Yet to his enemies, especially the powerful Russian boyars, he was nothing more than a fraud exploiting national crisis for his own gain. His downfall came swiftly. Rumors spread that Dmitry was an impostor with foreign sympathies, more loyal to Poland than to Russia. In 1606, outraged nobles stormed the Kremlin, assassinated him, and desecrated his body. His brief reign ended violently, but his audacity left a lasting mark. The saga didn't end there. Other pretenders soon appeared, each claiming to be Dmitry miraculously returned, fueling further chaos. The story of the false Dmitry remains one of history's most audacious scams. Not a swindle for money, but a con for power itself. He proved that with the right story, even a throne could be stolen, if only for a short time. The Nigerian Prince Emails, 1990s to 2000s. By the late 20th century, scams had moved from the backrooms of smoky bars to the brand new frontier of the internet. Among the earliest and most infamous digital cons was the so-called Nigerian Prince scam, a modern twist on the old Spanish prisoner trick adapted to email. The scam usually began with an urgent message. A wealthy Nigerian royal, government official, or businessman needed help transferring a fortune out of the country. In exchange for a small upfront payment to cover legal fees or banking costs, the victim was promised a share of the treasure, sometimes millions of dollars. The emails were often badly written, filled with spelling mistakes and over-the-top promises. And yet, astonishingly, they worked. Victims, caught between greed and sympathy, would send the requested fees. Once money was sent, new excuses would appear, more documents to file, more bribes to pay. Each time, the victim was drawn deeper into the scam. Many sent their life savings, chasing a reward that never existed. The genius of the Nigerian Prince scam wasn't its complexity, but its simplicity. Scammers deliberately left the errors in their messages. By doing so, they filtered for the most gullible recipients, those who would overlook red flags and keep paying. This tactic made their targets easier to manipulate over time. Though it became the butt of jokes, the impact was anything but funny. By the early 2000s, the scam had cost victims around the world hundreds of millions of dollars. Law enforcement cracked down, arresting some perpetrators, but the scam lived on in countless variations, from fake inheritances to lottery wins and romance scams. The Nigerian prince emails highlight a sobering truth. Even in the digital age, age-old cons survive by exploiting human greed, hope, and trust. It remains one of the most recognizable scams in internet history, a reminder that if an offer sounds too good to be true, it probably is. Bernard Madoff's investment fraud, 2008. In December 2008, the financial world was rocked by the exposure of one of the largest frauds in history. At the center of it all was Bernard Madoff, a respected Wall Street financier and former chairman of NASDAQ. For decades, Madoff cultivated an image of success, stability, and exclusivity. His investment firm promised consistent, reliable returns, something investors dreamed of in a volatile market. The problem was, none of it was real. Madoff's entire empire was built on a massive Ponzi scheme. Instead of actually investing client funds, he paid old investors with money from new ones, keeping the illusion of profits alive. His statements showed steady gains year after year, even when markets crashed. This impossible consistency attracted more and more clients, from celebrities and universities to charities and wealthy families. By the early 2000s, billions of dollars had flowed into his firm. What set Madoff apart from smaller fraudsters was the sheer scale of his con. At its peak, the scheme was valued at $65 billion, making it the largest Ponzi scheme ever uncovered. For years, regulators and whistleblowers had raised suspicions, but Madoff's reputation and connections shielded him from scrutiny. It wasn't until the financial crisis of 2008, when too many investors demanded withdrawals at once, that the house of cards collapsed. When investigators revealed the truth, the fallout was catastrophic. Thousands of investors lost everything, from life savings to endowments meant to fund hospitals and universities. Families were ruined, and charities were forced to shut down. Madoff himself was sentenced to 150 years in prison, where he remained until his death in 2021. The Madoff scandal became a global symbol of greed, deception, and the failures of oversight. More than just a financial crime, it shattered trust in the system and reminded the world how even the most reliable figures can hide devastating fraud behind a polished smile. The Bre-X mining scandal, 1990s. In the mid-1990s, the world was electrified by reports of a massive gold discovery in the jungles of Indonesia. A small Canadian mining company called Bre-X claimed to have struck one of the richest gold deposits in history near Busang on the island of Borneo. Investors rushed to buy shares, and Bre-X's stock price skyrocketed. At its peak, the company's valuation soared to more than $6 billion, making overnight millionaires out of early backers. But behind the glittering promise of gold lay one of the greatest frauds in mining history. The supposed discovery was based on core samples taken from the site. These samples, tested in labs, showed staggering amounts of gold. Yet what no one realized was that Bre-X geologist Michael de Guzman had been salting the samples, sprinkling gold dust, often shaved from jewelry, into the cores before sending them off for analysis. Each report confirmed the illusion of a treasure trove beneath the jungle floor, drawing in more investors and fueling a global gold frenzy. For years, Bre-X fooled not only ordinary investors, but also banks, analysts, and even major mining companies. The Indonesian government demanded a stake, while multinational corporations vied for a share of the gold rush. The fraud unraveled in 1997 when outside tests on new samples revealed virtually no gold at all. Bre-X's empire collapsed overnight, wiping out billions in investor wealth. The scandal turned darker when de Guzman fell to his death from a helicopter while flying over the Indonesian jungle. sparking rumors of suicide or silencing. With his death, much of the truth about the operation died as well. The Bre-X scandal remains a cautionary tale in the world of investing. It demonstrated how greed, hype, and a lack of due diligence can fuel bubbles and ruin fortunes. For those who believed they had struck gold, it was a cruel lesson. Sometimes the richest discovery of all is a lie. Enron, 2001. At the dawn of the 21st century, Enron was hailed as one of America's most innovative companies. Based in Houston, Texas, it billed itself as an energy giant that had transformed into a trading powerhouse, dealing not only in electricity and natural gas, but also in broadband and exotic financial products. Enron's stock price soared. Its executives were celebrated as visionaries, and investors poured billions into what seemed like a corporate miracle. But beneath the polished image lay one of the largest accounting frauds in history. Enron's leadership, including CEO Jeffrey Skilling and Chairman Kenneth Lay, relied on complex financial tricks to keep their empire afloat. They used mark-to-market accounting, a method that allowed them to count projected profits from deals as actual income, even if those profits never materialized. Meanwhile, mountains of debt were hidden in secret partnerships and shell companies. On paper, Enron looked unstoppable. In reality, it was a house of cards. The scam unraveled in late 2001, when journalists and analysts began asking hard questions about Enron's finances. Once the truth surfaced, confidence evaporated. Enron's stock collapsed from $90 a share to less than $1 in a matter of weeks. The company filed for bankruptcy in December 2001, wiping out $60 billion in market value, thousands of jobs, and the life savings of employees whose retirement funds had been tied to company stock. The fallout was enormous. Arthur Andersen, one of the world's largest accounting firms, was implicated for helping Enron hide its fraud and collapsed as well. The scandal led to sweeping reforms in corporate oversight, including the Sarbanes-Oxley Act, designed to prevent similar deceptions. The Enron debacle wasn't just about money, it was about trust. It showed how greed, arrogance, and unchecked power at the highest levels of business could bring down not just a company, but an entire system of confidence in the markets. Enron remains a symbol of corporate fraud on a global scale, the most infamous con in the countdown. From clever cons that tricked a few to financial frauds that shook entire economies, we've now reached the most infamous scam of them all. Thank you for watching. If you learned anything, let me know by liking the video and comment below on what you would like to see in the future. History never runs out of surprises, and neither do we. So subscribe and join me for the next dive into the archives.